Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we have one amendment to our agenda, which we're going.
Swear in.
And our clerk will be right back to handle that. We're grabbing the Bible.
There you go.
There you go.
Make it official.
Well, unofficially, all.
Thank you, ma'am. Glad to be here.
Feel free to keep your mic on if you
Okay.
want it recorded.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Bibles are necessary for oaths.
You went to all that trouble to print that, so I'm going to use it.
Raise one hand. Put the other on the Bible. I, Brad Burton,
I, Brad Burton,
do solemnly and sincerely affirm
do solemnly and sincerely affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina
and to the constitutional powers and authorities
and to the constitutional powers and authorities
which are or may be established for the government thereof,
which are or may be established for the government thereof,
and that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state,
and I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state,
not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States,
not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States,
to the best of my knowledge and ability.
to the best of my knowledge and ability.
I, Brad Burton, further solemnly affirm
I, Brad Burton, further solemnly affirm
that I will execute the office of planning board member
that I will execute the office of planning board member
for the town of Mills River, North Carolina,
for the town of Mills River, North Carolina,
without prejudice, favor, affection, or partiality,
without prejudice, favor, affection, or partiality,
to the best of my skill and ability.
to the best of my skill and ability.
This 7th day of October, 2025.
The 7th day of October, 2025.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well.
Next week are going. Make a motion to approve.
Before we do that, I don't know if this is time to bring that up, but like they did in the council meeting where they rearranged the agenda to have board comments after public comment. Can we do that here?
I talked with Mike about that and I agree. I like the town council change that in case there's something could interact with that or permanently, not just.
It's at the board's pleasure. So I mean, if you want to do a motion and majority vote to change it tonight, and we'll take that direction going forward.
Yeah, I make a motion that we rearrange those tonight.
Yep, I'll second it.
All in favor of reorganizing our agenda so that board comment, the public comment?
Was that all of our discussion?
Yeah, is there any other discussion before we made a motion?
Sure.
Right.
I just want to make sure. Couple of stuff with that. Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay. Ready?
Aye.
Pass. one.
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda with the changes, tonight's agenda with the changes.
Second.
All in favor of tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
We also have That's or discussion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the meetings, the minutes, I'm sorry, from the September 9th, 2025 planning.
I second that.
All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Turn over the meeting.
Thank you, Board. Just a couple brief updates. Staff made a presentation at the August 14th council meeting about the town's traffic schedule and looking at some potential speed limit reductions in the town. I just wanted to update y'all that basically we've moved forward with that in coordination with DOT. They've not conducted a study yet. It takes 1 to 2 months for us to basically get into their queue or their list of roads to be studied. But preliminarily, we're looking at having the speed limits studied on the following roads. Banner Farm Road, the portion of Butler Bridge Road between Jeffress and the French Broad River. There's a section of 55-mile-per-hour speed limit there. The entirety of Jeffress Road, which is currently at 45 miles per hour. The entirety of Schoolhouse Road, and then a section of Boylston Highway that runs through the central portion of town. Currently, there's a 45 mile per hour section that starts at Old Haywood Road, and I believe goes to Presbyterian Church Road. So we're looking at extending that out a little further in both directions. But just wanted to update planning board that there's been movement on that. And then I don't know if anyone watched the council meeting last week or the special meeting yesterday, but just wanted to state, since the planning board reviewed this last time, that council did pass an amended version of the hazard prevention ordinance for flood prone areas in the town. And so that was passed and signed 3-2 vote, and that'll be updated in our code of ordinances shortly. That's all I have.
We're gonna switch that tonight.
Yeah, you voted to switch
sorry.
it.
I didn't know.
Oh, sorry.
But Mr. Young, and Mr. Cohn on there, is there anyone else that wanted to sign up? So that got changed.
The comment portion of our meeting tonight. Yeah, if you want to.
I do. And thank you very much tonight for being able to address this board. It's my understanding that this board will be taking up possibly any change or some changes to the nuisance ordinance. And since the town's lived with this for a number of years, as you take it up, I would like just to offer a few suggestions. And I guess to summarize it is, I see the current ordinance in two pieces. The first one being the general provisions, the second one being noise. And my ask of this board is that I really would like the first section to look more like the second section. And what do I mean by that is that the noise section is kind of predicated on not all noises are necessarily a nuisance. And so there's 8 considerations of factors that staff, the public, and governing bodies can take into account to help guide them as to whether the noise is a nuisance or not. And I won't name all of them, but some of them that I think that are appropriate are proximity to residential structures, the nature and zoning of the area, whether the noise is related to normal operation of a business or other labor activity, and also whether the noise is subject to be controlled without unreasonable effort or expense to the creator. And you'll go back to the first part, and my comments aren't really geared towards sewage and dead carcasses and things of that. Mainly the section E is an echo about outdoor storage. But it says at the beginning of the prohibitions in that section A through K that basically these are declared nuisances. And when you get to E, my comments to this board are basically not necessarily all these things constitute a nuisance. There should be some factors considered. And I think you could cut and paste some of those from the noise ahead of this one about solid waste, about, basically what zone is it in? Because to me, a stack of pallets in general business or light industrial is not the same as a stack of pallets in MR30 or in a residential setting. And, it's like if I have a small engine repair shop, I might have 6, 8, 10 mowers or small mechanical equipment outside my shop. And those are integral. It's an important part of my business. There may be ones waiting for customers to pick up, ones that customers dropped off, ones that I'm currently working on. I might even have a part mower out there that I'm currently robbing parts of, but they're integral to the business. And so just saying that the accumulation of machinery at a property is declared a nuisance, and it's sort of just stop. I mean, there's no consideration or other factors. And I think it's a disservice to the businesses in our community. And quite frankly, it's a disservice to the residents that I think there really should be some more added to this nuisance ordinance, especially as it relates to solid waste. And so that's my ask, is basically if you'll sort of replicate what you've done with noises and put it towards solid waste. And let's look at what the land's being used for. Is the solid waste that's being stored outside, is that integral to the business? I mean, is it truly a part of it? I mean, if not, then yes, it's a nuisance. But I don't think that this document, when it was originally adopted, was intended to go after businesses to be used to pit neighbor against neighbor and allow anonymous complainants to lodge complaints against bona fide businesses just because they don't like it when things aren't visible from the public right away. But you sort of tie the hands of the field staff when they go out there, because when they look at the ordinance, it says, a pallet is a nuisance. A machine sitting outside is a nuisance, and there's really no consideration. So I would just ask, as you revisit this, keep that in mind, and maybe fashion the first part more like the second part and make it a little more reasonable for both the enforcement of it and for people to comply with it. Thank you.
Good evening, planning board. I'm Jimmy Cowan, live off Presbyterian Church Road here in Mills River. First, I want to thank you all for serving on the planning board, and I feel blessed that we can come locally and voice an opinion, and you hear it here locally versus not being able to share concerns and deal with it. I was thinking this afternoon with Helene damage a year ago. Imagine if all the businesses got wiped out in Mills River like a lot of the watershed did along the river. If our businesses got wiped out, very few could rebuild the way they are in Mills River. We take their tax money, and they pay most of the taxes around here, but we're saying their buildings aren't good enough. That's an issue, but that's not really why I'm here to talk tonight. I do think that needs to be addressed. Most of them don't fit the current ordinance, but I'm here to talk tonight about my friend Todd Wagner. Todd and his family run Scott's Garage up on Boylston Highway and Naples Transportation. And it goes a lot farther than that one business. It really goes and applies to a lot of businesses here in Mills River. Their business was operating when Mills River became a town. They're not doing a thing different today than they were back then. The nuisance ordinance, when it came to be, I was concerned about it. I got a copy of it. I was assured by the town mayor, different council, different mayor, different planning board. I was assured that as long as it was business related, it would not be considered a nuisance. So something, not associated with the business could definitely be considered a nuisance. But if it's business related, then it wouldn't be considered a nuisance. Somehow that's not in the language anymore. And it looks like a pile of scrap metal at a welding shop could be a nuisance. A pile of tires at a tire shop could be a nuisance. A parts vehicle at a vehicle repair shop can be a nuisance. And I have a real problem with that. And all of you should too, because unless you're a great mechanic, unless you can provide all of your needs and are self-sustaining, we got to have these businesses in the community that are vital to our neighborhood. They do a great service for us. Scott's Garage provides a valuable service, not only to the truckers in the area, but the farmers as well. We need them. Please revisit this subject with something more fitting for our community and current businesses. I agree with Mr. Young. I think commercial should be separate from residential. It's a whole different ballgame. I think complaints need a name on them. The reason I say that is not to protect Todd or me. It's to protect the town, because otherwise, whatever you decide to put in the ordinance and the council approves, one person with time on their hands can change our whole community, one complaint at a time, or turn in 10 in a day. And staff's responsible for tracking them down. And based on the ordinance, I rode around 2 hours today. And I documented about 65 quick things I could turn in. Would I do that? Absolutely not, but I could. Do we want that to happen? I don't think so. It's just not a good fit. What else I got here? I've read the nuisance ordinance. I read it pretty thoroughly twice. It mentions rotten wood. Who says what rotten wood is? If you cut a flower, it starts dying when you cut it. If you cut a tree, it starts dying when you cut the tree. Who decides how rotten can be? I don't know. There's a lot of, I guess, up for discussion in the ordinance, and it needs to a little more black and white. We all like paved roads, but nobody wants an asphalt plant. We all produce trash, but nobody wants a trash dump. We're clearing land every day in Mills River as we're losing farmland. We got to have a stump dump, but especially in the last 3 or 4 days, nobody wants a stump dump. But it's a vital part of our community, is it not? Unless we want to stop growth. I don't think we want to do that, or it doesn't seem like we do. 2 parcels of land that come to mind that are heavily varmint infested and a health hazard to the community. And I'm not going to file a formal complaint at this point, but the lower section of our town park, you can imagine the number of rats that run out of there if I took a disc mower down there to mow hay on it right now. Possums, coons, mice. If I go down there and do that and you're parked out here, they might get in your car. They end up at your house. And I don't know who owns this land right next door here, but it looks like an abandoned tract of property somebody's not taking care of. There's abandoned buildings over there. And I bet if we went over there and shined a light at midnight tonight, some eyes would be looking back at us. I don't know if it's a homeless person or a coon or a possum, but there's going to be something over there looking back. We need to take the speck out of our own eye before we point our finger at somebody else. We're a community. Let's get along like one and make sure our ordinances suit us. Thank you.
If it's open, table, or,
Yeah.
is that okay?
Yep.
Great.
So you can just.
Sorry, by yourself.
Just record if you can give your meeting.
Sure. Yeah. Good evening. Thank you so much. My name is Nathan Weber, longtime resident, and I live at 47 Indian Trail, South Mills River Road. Would like to just piggyback off of what the other 2 gentlemen said. I moved back here from a different career, and I plan to stay. We're heavily involved in this community. We're in the mobile foam space. We are also in the welding space. And I would just simply say that, everything is interconnected, right? So if Todd fixes a truck that keeps our materials moving to the job site, that customer's happy, we get paid, our family, the guys that work for us can feed their family. And I don't think I need to necessarily paint that for you. You get the gist. But as somebody who at age 46 intends to stay in this community for some time, probably live out my days here, could see that happening. I want to make sure that this town that we live in is, thinking and looking at things for the future. And I know there's a lot of discussion about ag land being taken over for housing, and we're also thrust into a housing, situation where there isn't enough for those that may be underlooked or overlooked that are in the service sector versus folks who are buying because they like the region. Everybody likes the region. It was here before we came along, and it'll probably be here when we're gone. But as somebody that is investing their time and energy, I want to see this place prosper as much as everybody else does, I believe, right? That's why we're all here tonight. And so, just please take consideration when you look at zoning versus, and you have regulation, in the trade, you have commercial, you have residential, and they're very, very different. So if you're gonna zone us in that particular area over there as commercial, then, I think I don't know all of the nuances of the ordinance, but I do know that my father is here with me tonight. He came here in the 70s. I was born here, so I'm basically first generation for what it's worth. That business has been established there for at least 30 years, and my cousin and I intend to see that into the future. So just that's kind of, I'm sort of maybe a younger generation that's coming along. We've got a lot of folks here who have been here a long time, and so having some, I don't know, new life. Nobody's leaving. Some people are coming in, but they're transplants, so they don't necessarily know the history of the place. And so I think that it resonates with some people and falls short with others. So anyhow, thank you for your time. I appreciate what you're doing.
My name is Phil Weber. I've been here almost 6 years. Hard to think that, but it's true. And I've seen tremendous changes in this community, from essentially agricultural, dairy, and increasingly agricultural activities are in the wane. I don't think there are any more dairies in this area. But what I would like to say tonight is thank you very much. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your thinking. I love my community. I love my neighbors, and I want a community that goes into the future with the best of intentions and the best of good hope. This is a wonderful neighbor. This is a wonderful neighbor to bring up children. And we want to stay that way. There's some people who are very concerned about the amount of domestic development. As a matter of fact, I came with Rick Livingston, and we talked about the fire department. And I felt that Mr. Livingston did a remarkably fine job in shepherding the creation of our firehouse. And it was expensive, but not as expensive yesterday as it's going to be tomorrow. And so I think we got an exceptionally good deal on the fire department that we have. And by gosh, we need it. Driving past 181, 280, I've seen 2 snorkel trucks out there constantly dumping water on that fire. But I would like to say this, and in following up on what you said, there's a difference between my living condition. I try to keep a very low profile, and I try not to disturb my neighbors. In the commercial sense, some people might drive by and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, this looks like a landfill." Well, it's really not. We do a lot of structural creations, columns, beams, so on and so forth. And if you look at our laydown yard, you say, "Man, that's a bunch of junk." Well, it's not. It's very expensive junk. And eventually it will be part of something that hopefully benefits the community. So I'm not here to make any enemies. Like I say, I love my neighbors, and I'm a bit distressed that we live in a society where people are unkind to one another, sometimes uncivil, sometimes downright rude. That's not my intention. My intention is to encourage harmony in the neighborhood and pass regulations that ennoble us all and make our community better. So thank you very much.
Well,
You have the news. That's the third specific.
I just wanna confirm, if you will, or reiterate what previous gentleman said. I've only been here 18 years, but I'm here because I love what I saw when I came first time and discovered Mills River. And if I had my way, it would be that way. It was 18 years ago, because it's Mills River. And that's what makes it unique. And just hearing some of the comments, I heard comments in council meeting. I don't know if we're gonna have this up for discussion tonight. But I don't know, if you might have ought to consider throwing the whole thing out and start over. Because, to make sure that we maintain as much of the Mills River as it was as we can. First of all, we gotta protect agriculture. That's the first thing to me. We gotta protect existing businesses. And, yeah, and of course, go back to one thing Jeff said. I don't know if you can define how many cars, because as your business grows, can you define how many cars you're gonna have working on? I know the person in Mills Road works on my vehicles. He gets a lot of cars on his lot a lot of times, primarily because cars need working on and you can't get the parts, you know, it's a lot of things to be considered, but I just, we'll see where we go from here, but like I said, I don't know. This, if I remember right, this ordinance has sort of been around for a while and made some changes, but maybe we ought to just start over, taking in fact that this is Mills River and we want to keep it Mills River. That's all I got.
First of all, Brad, the first day you've proven smarter than all of us combined by
Oh my
printing the
God.
oath
Are you?
that we all struggle to repeat and having that enhanced. So good job.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
The UDO comments, obviously, we have a ton of those covered. Couple comments were a little broader. If you guys, just a reminder, Imagine Mills River website that the UDO, some of those things fall into that zoning. We are not changing any zoning at this point at this board. In fact, by state law, we're not even allowed to right now. But that UDO is a big part of what you were saying. Lastly, Michael, would it be appropriate for you, since everybody here is on the UDO board, take a quick minute to explain to us? I watched remotely, I saw Jim present, the option 2, the hazard ordinance or the hazard policy. Would it be appropriate to kind of give us a quick overview of the option 2 that town council voted in? The couple of bullet points that were different than what we had previously reviewed.
I could possibly do it at the end of the meeting, but I'm not prepared to do that tonight.
Since that's coming back, I assume that we're gonna have that conversation part of the UDO as a ordinance, not as a hazard policy.
Correct. And I mean, the ordinance was just passed yesterday and staff's preparing, materials that would be going up on the website, for educational purposes and just announcement of it.
I may ask the chair to maybe request a review of that next meeting. And not bother with you. Listening yesterday, we didn't get the opportunity to talk it out. That's all.
My only comment is that I love public comment, and I would encourage, especially the next several months and beyond, as we work through the UDO and so forth. I don't sit here to amplify or what my own thoughts are. I'm trying to reflect what the public thought is, and I don't know that, unless the public shows up in meetings and public comments. So always helpful. And so I encourage everybody, to participate in this process through public comments or otherwise.
I agree with that.
I'm afraid to say anything after what Brian just
You're
said.
not allowed to till it next.
That's fine. I'll sit here like a knot on a log, man. Public comment is very important. You guys had some very good comments. I looked at this when Michael sent it, and I agree with, Mr. Young. It's not written all that well. It is what we've got, and it isn't what's in place, but there are, there's some things in here that are just, and when you put stuff in black and white, then you hobble the poor individual that's been sworn to enforce that. And when he goes and sees a stack of pallets and it says a stack of pallets, you've really done not only the guy that's trying to do his job a disservice, but moreover, the business owner. And I see exactly where Mr. Young is coming from in that regard. And I think that this really needs it doesn't need some massaging. It needs some dynamite, be taken to it, I believe. Not throwing any rocks at anybody that would hear. And I'm certainly a new guy, so I better not say anything too outlandish, but there's there's a way to get to where we need to be. The town is, you'll hear me say this over and over, the folks that established this town, I've been here 31 years. Let me tell you about me a little bit. I've been here 31 years. I'm not from here. I grew up in Winston-Salem, married a Hendersonville girl, and got here as quick as I possibly could. And love it. Wouldn't dream of living where else. Member of Mills River Methodist Church, Kedron Lodge 387, and Masonic Lodge, active member of the community, and very excited to be on the planning board. I bring a little bit of background to this position, and I think that one thing that everyone needs to realize is the folks that work so hard to make Mills River, the town of Mills River, they did a great job, but we have to really look and realize that we are a town, and being a town and being a municipality in the eyes of the North Carolina General Assembly, and nobody pick up any tar or any feathers and throw them at me till I get finished here. Okay. We're viewed as a municipality, just like Charlotte or Raleigh. And if you're going to put something on the books, you're bound to it. You have to deal with it. You have to enforce it. This is not crafted in a manner that is apropos for this community, in my opinion. I think it needs a lot of work, but then again, there are things that need to be addressed, and there's certain situations. And the thing that I don't see in this document is that usually accompanies every code enforcement officer or the planning director or anybody else that does the enforcement. This is a level of discretion. You can work with people, and that's one of the things that I think we need to keep, in the back of our minds at all times. While we, I agree with Jim, we need to maybe take the baby and the bathwater and, find us a new baby and some new bathwater and get started with something new here. But I'm hesitant to throw out, what we've got until we have something going in that direction. So that's kind of a digressive, rambling look at how I'm seeing things here. But I think that the concerns that have been brought forward tonight by Mr. Young and you, both Mr. Webbers are viable and are important that we look at that through that lens when we start drafting this ordinance. I didn't mean to be so long. I talk good. It was good. Yeah.
Virginia ain't got yet.
Yeah. It's true. It's early.
Wait. I have questions.
Yeah, I just want to say, I appreciate all the comments.
I totally agree with all of them. Jim, you made a good point that I growed up too. The lower part down there. I don't understand why it's not cleaned up. It's like you, but man needs to clean up his own backyard, you know, before he gets out here trying to straighten everybody else out, you know? But I guess we really do need to throw it out like Jim said. Shannon said throw it out and leave it out, but I know we can't do that, so I'd like to start over. See what.
I'm just gonna say thank y'all.
Oh.
Cause you're gonna hear me talk later about a lot of things. I've got tons of questions. Just wanna say thank y'all, cause I'm waiting for the presentation by the town. Hopefully that'll answer some of my questions from Mr. Kevin, and then we'll go. Put this theme. I think we've already shared some general thoughts about ordinance, but specifically heard some mention of scrapping it and starting over. Heard some suggestions, Mr. Young, that perhaps it's trying to take some aspect of how the noise specifically serving, trying to apply those to giving some factors, so then we work. Well, board has an approach that they would like to see.
I think there's a presentation, right? Yeah.
Thank you, board. So I'm just going to introduce this item and kind of rehash what's in some of the staff report, just background about how the nuisance ordinance came about. And then Mr. Webb, our planning technician, does have a presentation. Since he's been with the town, he really serves as our primary code enforcement officer. So I thought it was worthwhile for him to give his perspective through the presentation. But as you're aware, council discussed this topic at their last two meetings and requested the planning board to review it. So that's why we're here tonight. So the nuisance ordinance was originally adopted April 11th of 2019. Interestingly, looking at the council minutes, there was a 6-month grace period after adoption. So the ordinance didn't go into effect until October 2019. And the town actually mailed postcards to all property owners in Mills River about a month before that, the date it went into effect, to basically inform the public about the nuisance ordinance going into place. I did look briefly at some of like council's historical minutes just to get an idea of how, the nuisance ordinance came about. And there's discussions going all the way back to 2006, again, the town being incorporated in 2003. And it seems like there was a lot of back and forth discussion about, the benefits and detriments of what a nuisance ordinance could do for the community. But ultimately it was adopted in 2019. And really the only other change that's been done was in 2021, the state land use law, chapter 160D changes. There was changes in state land use law. We had to change all of our ordinances to be in compliance with that. So since this ordinance was adopted, the nuisance ordinance from 2019, there's been no changes to it whatsoever. Now staff has noticed that there is a need for an update. We actually gave a presentation to council in March of this year, reviewing the ordinance, our code enforcement process, etc. and basically looked for some direction from council about, additional enforcement options, and some additional, provisions they might like to see. And a couple of things, that were highlighted in that meeting, that I didn't call out specifically, in the staff report that council would like the board to look at. But from the March meeting, they specifically asked to investigate setting limits for daily or weekly fine amounts, a maximum limit for total fine amounts, and time limits where a case may automatically be sent to legal or to the courts for compliance. Because there are some trouble cases we've been dealing with for years where there may be fines against the property and the property owner just refuses to get in touch with us. But again, the specific ask from council for the planning board to review is listed here, and I'll just read this for the public. This has already been touched on, but standards for residential properties versus business properties, if appropriate. Standards for sites where there's active construction projects where some debris may be expected. Standards for auto repair businesses, body shops, and similar establishments where junk vehicles could, reasonably be expected at the property. And then also consider the impacts of loosening the regulations, which could potentially cause, potential other violations to pop up around town. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Webb. He's going to do a more in-depth overview of the ordinance itself and the process, and then we'll be happy to answer questions. I'll just say, feel free to interrupt at any time. Sorry, Kevin. But this is really a discussion. Staff is not trying to drive this process or make specific recommendations. Now, we have researched, nuisance ordinances in other communities, and so there are some best practices we may recommend. But really, the goal tonight is to start an informal discussion about this and get feedback from the planning board so we know how to move forward for y'all. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Webb.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, planning board members. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. I got my pen ready for notes from y'all. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump into it. So this is just a brief overview of the presentation tonight. We're going to talk about the history of code enforcement in the town, a background on the code itself, including purpose and objectives, what the nuisance prohibitions are, our current code enforcement workflow process internally for staff, and then just a general question: what is a nuisance? Then we'll jump into current enforcement for significant outdoor storage and junk vehicles specifically, as those are our most common cited nuisance violations. And then after that, we're gonna jump into enforcement options. Some questions to think about with some of our current nuisance prohibitions in terms of how to enforce them differently, getting feedback from the board. And then big picture questions, and then we're going to have a Q&A at the end, So just to give a brief history, the first nuisance ordinance was passed in early 2019. There was limited code enforcement staffing between 2019 and 2021. Code enforcement increased in 2021 due to hiring a zoning administrator and picking up a backlog of unresolved citizen complaints. I was hired as the planning technician in early 2023, which increased staff capacity for code enforcement. In early 2023, we also started our online complaint system through SmartGov, increasing the number of code enforcement cases and requests we've received. And those numbers are rising. I'll just give you a quick statistic I pulled off is, case requests in 2024, we had 66 in total. And this year now in 2025, we have 99 case requests. Now, not all these lead to active code enforcement cases where, we're the responsible party for enforcement. Some of these will be, referred to different agencies if it's a sediment erosion control complaint that we do not enforce. So just to keep that in mind. So here is the purpose and objective section of the nuisance ordinance. So the purpose in general is to protect the health safety and welfare of the people in town of Mills River. Some of the objectives are to prevent injury and illness to occupants of property and the public, to remove public nuisances, to provide townwide standards for the abatement of public nuisances, including but not limited to noise, solid waste, junk motor vehicles, and abandoned manufactured homes. To establish responsibility of involved parties and assure that people are not unnecessarily exposed to dangers of public nuisances. And then to ensure proper actions may be taken to abate public nuisances. Very, very general. So what is the definition of a public nuisance? And this is highly dependent on the municipality that enforces it. You know, different municipalities, through my research, and the different ordinances have different definitions of what a public nuisance is. Per our code, it's defined as, and I'm going to read it verbatim because it's highly important right now. Any activity or use of property or personal property or failure to act that adversely affects the public and shall include but is not limited to any condition which poses an immediate and direct hazard to human health if left unheeded due to the existence of the condition itself or due to the immediate threat of transmission through insects, animals, or other means of transmission or infections. That is the definition out of our code verbatim. So here are the prohibitions. So these are what there's a total of, I believe, 10 or 11 of them that we are responsible for enforcing. So prohibitions: the creation of maintenance of a public nuisance is strictly prohibited without limiting the generality of the foregoing. The following are hereby expressly declared to be public nuisances. First one is improper sewage disposal, such as, sewage waste leaking above the ground. Second one is an unsecured opening caused by improperly abandoned cistern, well pit, sewage treatment system, unused or non-maintained swimming pool, mine shaft, or tunnel. Have not, since I've been here, I have not had any complaints about that. I'll be direct with you. And this is, our nuisance prohibitions are pretty much almost copy and paste over from Henderson County, just to let you know. C, failure to keep waste, refuse, or garbage in an enclosed building or properly contained in an enclosed insect and rodent-proof container designated to, or reasonably adapted for such purpose. So making sure your trash is in an enclosed trash bin, trash can, an enclosed thing to keep your trash inside, not outside towards the elements. Accumulation of carcasses of animals, birds, or fish by failure to bury, store, or otherwise dispose of in a sanitary manner within 24 hours after death. Again, I've never, since I've been here, had a complaint about that. This one, E, significant outdoor storage. This is the most common, complaint. One of them that we receive is about significant outdoor storage of solid waste, including but not limited to decaying animal or vegetable matter, animal or human feces, trash, rubbish, garbage, rotting lumber, packing materials, scrap material, pallets, fuel storage containers, tools, tires and wheels, furnaces, home appliances, furniture, plumbing fixtures, construction materials, amusement park devices, metal, pipes, rubber, glass bottles, and so on. One thing it's missing is what's the definition of significant outdoor storage? That's not defined in our nuisance ordinance. One thing to think about. F, accumulation of rubbish or junk has to become dangerous or injurious to the health and safety of any individual to the public. G, this is our other common complaint we receive. Any junk motor vehicles without a current vehicle restoration permit and or any abandoned manufactured home as defined. In the code, an abandoned manufactured home is defined as not having legal power or water or sewage connections within the last 6 months. So if it's disconnected for 6 more months, it's defined as as an abandoned manufactured home.
I've got a question for Michael.
Yeah.
Do we still have the assistance, for abandoned mobile home removal?
That was a program through Henderson County. I'm not aware if they still have funding for it.
Thank you.
I have one question. When
Yes, sir.
we say recreational vehicle used to store solid waste, what about a car that people use to store garbage?
I mean, it's not stated specifically in the ordinance, but I don't know. I have to get back to you on that, sir.
I'm aware of one in the town of Milford.
Yeah.
Rats could be accumulating and
And most of the time, if there's solid waste being stored in a vehicle, the vehicle is most of the time junked from my experience.
may not even have a tag. Okay.
Yeah.
Will you repeat the question that you used?
Yes, sure. Do we still have the, assistance for the abandoned mobile home, removal? At one point, we did have assistance from the county, that if we had an abandoned mobile home, you know, your great aunt died, nobody moved in, that the county would assist in some of the monetary means to remove that home for you.
Thank
you.
All right. Yeah, so just to reiterate, yep, so significant outdoor storage and junk motor vehicles are our most typical nuisance violations, including complaints that we receive in the town. Next one is infestation of flies, fleas, cockroaches, lice, rats, mice, fly larvae, hookworm larvae, or other insects, parasites, or vermin. Not common to receive complaints about that, from my experience. Breeding grounds which support mosquito larvae and mosquitoes capable of carrying diseases or any other disease-causing microorganism. Most of the time, this is included with unmaintained swimming pools. They have a lot of algae and just nasty stuff growing in them. Next is use of a recreational vehicle as a primary residence without permitted electric, water, and sewage connections. And then K, recreational vehicles used to store solid waste. Yeah.
This is the moratorium for the RV. Did the council put in a moratorium right after?
They just extended it.
That came up with discussion.
So it was supposed to expire October 24th of 25, and they just extended it another 6 months beyond that date. Correct.
So the next slide, I'm going to talk about our current code enforcement workflow process. So this is how day-to-day enforcement is conducted in the town. So we receive a complaint, but more commonly, they're being submitted through our online permit, or it's also a permit portal, but our complaint system, SmartGov. Next, staff usually go out and
Question right there. 'Cause if I don't ask, I'll forget it. So.
Yeah.
I was under the assumption that, anonymous meant maybe staff knows, but, you know, the person who's the subject of the complaint doesn't know, but we don't know. It's anonymous completely if they go online, correct?
So it depends if they want to be updated with the status of, let's say, an active code enforcement case. They can provide their contact information and we will keep them updated at their request. If it's anonymous, there's no way for staff to keep them updated.
Is there, I know we've looked at, I'm sure, when this was built or whatever, looked around at other, like Cobb and Henderson counties. Are there other municipalities where, which I think is a valid point, where there can't be any anonymous submissions?
Required to be anonymous.
Lease with, well, yeah.
So I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I'll be happy to get back with y'all on that. So
Kevin, can I ask Michael a question? This might be a new thing in 160D since I hung up my hat. At one point in time, the courts had ruled that an ongoing investigation by a sworn official, are you sworn? You have an oath of office to
no,
do
sir.
code enforcement? Okay. And my point is probably moot. But and there, at one point in time, a decade ago, I guess it was, the courts ruled that a sworn officer that was investigating any complaint that was an exercise of the town's police power, municipal police power, had the same level of investigatory status as a law enforcement officer. To wit, you know, if you see it on TV all the time, the reporter will ask the detective, what's the status of this case? He says, I'm sorry, I can't comment on that. Well, who brought this up? I'm sorry, I can't comment on that. And that was a pretty hard and fast position that the courts were taking. Again, years ago. I don't know if that's changed in 160D, the current climate. I don't know if that is still, but I do know it was contingent completely upon the investigating authorities being sworn as code officials with the town. In other words, having the ability to do the police power thing. And I just throw that out there because if that is still germane, then anonymity up until, and then that all stops when it's resolved. Okay. When it's resolved, it was my understanding that, you know, if whoever the complainant was, you know, could query and find out, you know, who it was and all this, that, and the other. But while the investigation was underway, it was anonymous. And I don't want to split hairs. I don't want everybody roll their eyes and go, God, where did we find this guy? But I know that was true. And so, you know, again, that kind of gives a little bit of insight as to why there is a background of an anonymity when people report this stuff. Now, that may have changed. Again, it may be contingent upon the official status that's enforcing it. But I just, you know, I don't think it's an arbitrary, you know, we're not going to tell anybody who you are so you can rat on somebody else situation. I think it was put in place to protect the complainant for when something was viable. And the matter, you know, where there might be potential, you know, physical harm to the complainant on the part of the party that was being complained on.
Brad, that's what I was gonna say. I would be blown away if the town was allowed to release the name of a complaint.
And I don't-
think
yeah.
That's dangerous and that can.
Yeah, that's-
That's legal.
All I gotta do is have here.
Sure.
Well, and that's my point. I mean, it's ripe for abuse.
Correct.
And so
I
I
agree.
I don't think that a person is being complained on or the subject of the complaint, excuse me, I have English,
Mhm.
you know, needs to know, but if the staff knows in every case, then you could see a pattern of abuse, right? Without having, you know, endangering each other or whatever, for getting mad at each other or whatever, but I just think it's ripe for abuse. We know from that anonymous survey, you know, that we had where somebody took a
Right.
joyride on their computer. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's one of the big questions I have on here. How do we balance that, you know, remaining anonymous with not abusing it?
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I
there's
can
gotta
see if
be
there's a
something in
real
there.
issue with a neighbor or something like that, you'd want to remain anonymous from your neighbor and maybe many neighbors, but if the town has record of who all these complainants are, then they could see that pattern of abuse.
I don't know what that trigger is, but if the town sees, you know, one person had 10 complaints in a day, that's,
Yeah.
sorry, that's an issue. That's not the intent. There's gotta be something to put that.
with somebody driving through from, I don't know, somewhere else, doesn't matter, it's not. In there. You don't live here. You don't get somewhere. So that would be my other, if we can't make the full name. or- Something like that.
So I know we're just building this from the ground up, and for whoever's listening out there in the room, I believe only one planning board member was here then, and none of our 3 town employees were here then. So this is all very new to anyone listening out. This is very new to us. It was apparent immediately that it was, kind of thrown out. A lot of thoughtfulness. I don't think we're gonna have a lot of arguments on some of this stuff, especially businesses, zoning districts, usage. I assuming we're keeping a list of questions, because that's a big one for me, what we're talking about. I would keep the public confident in putting in a complaint and having something to counter abuse.
And if you receive a complaint, then you're obligated to do something about it, okay? But that doesn't mean that you cannot, especially if you're sworn and you have some discretionary power, that you can't say, okay, this is the 8th one in the past week
Right.
from this URL. You can probably get the URL from the the Uniform Resource Locator, the numbers that tell you what computer it came from.
My hopes is there's
And-
some legal way for town to collect information and then be bound not to share.
So where I'm going with that
I
is
agree with that.
if it's, the 8th complaint in 1 week and and the officer, okay, I've got these complaints, write out and you go, well, there's really not all that much here. You can, the discretionary power is saying, okay, I've received the complaint. I'm going to make a note in my files. I find this unfounded and move on. Sometimes it could be that simple. I've done that. Just throwing that out there. I think I'll go right out on a limb now and say, I think it's very important that council consider, providing whoever's doing code enforcement an oath of office. That gives, because that not only gives them some authority, but it also protects them from a liability standpoint. It protects the town. Because now you have ramped up the standard for whoever's doing that, and there is you have a higher standard other than just, I'm not picking on you, Kevin, because I don't know you. I don't know anybody. But but I mean, if you have that, if you have that oath of office, have that authority, and you've been given tasked with that responsibility, then you have a responsibility to respond to those things. But you also have some discretionary power, and you have some legal buffer in the liability of what you do. If you complaint number 8, wrote out there, didn't see anything, wrote this in the file, this is the date, I find this unfounded, and they decide to sue, well, our sworn code enforcement officer responded to your complaint, went out, took a look, took pictures, found it unfounded. Sorry, and that's kind of that's how you might deal with some of that stuff, and that's kind of simplistic.
Well, a very detailed ordinance would help as well.
Would also
rather than
help.
just
Exactly.
limiting Pallets, for example.
That's right.
And
That's
simply and definitely distinguish between business and residential.
And as far as
It's a huge difference.
anonymous, I'm all in favor of that basically. Because like Brad said, there is a way, if push
Yeah.
comes to shove, we can find out. But if you get in a week from the same thing and a week, he goes out and there's nothing to see here, then it's time to pursue this other option. and Find out where it's coming from and we'll pursue them. But I still think the anonymous reporting is a good thing.
And again, I think it was written in the code. I think this gentleman right here, and I don't remember your name, but you were at the council meeting a couple meetings ago and on Jeffress Road, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
And so the anonymity there, I think probably covered up that something I'd like to avoid, and that is if somebody's been here for years or decades And, and it's part of a business especially. And somebody, in the near or more recently purchased land around it with full knowledge of what was already there. And then they turn around and file an anonymous nuisance ordinance. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't think there's anything more egregious than that you've been here. And because the world closed in on you, you have to change what you've done, especially if it's a business. I don't agree with that. So that's why I don't like the anonymity completely.
And the logistics of it would work better if the town staff had the information to go back to that person about, because when you're talking about pulling and indemnity and then have to go to IP addresses and whatnot, that's a lot of leg.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
Requiring. So, I don't want to add undue stress on enforcement at all because they're very. But, when it comes to the next stuff,
And Ms. Silly, I just wanted to let you know, most complainants do provide contact information, because they do want to be updated from my experience getting complaints in our system. Just wanted to let you know that. So, okay, where were we? First, okay, so we receive a complaint. It can come through our, complaint system online. It can come from a phone call, email, and also we have a complaint form that citizens can fill out. So we receive the complaint. Usually we'll go out and investigate that complaint within 24 to 48 hours. If we find that it is a founded complaint and that there are active code violations on that property, our first step is to issue a first notice of violation. Basically, a notice of violation is the standard operating procedure for saying that the property is in violation of certain codes, giving them a compliance period and corrective actions to get the property in compliance. Typically, depending on the type of nuisance and the severity of it, we usually have a 30-day compliance deadline period for the property owner to get the property in compliance or make significant progress. So just the next step, so after that due date, typically 30 days, we'll follow up with a compliance inspection and see if any progress is made or that it's been resolved.
What is that one quick question?
Yeah, yes, sir.
What is your compliance ratio, you think, on first notice?
Typically, most of the time how code enforcement works is someone gets a notice and they're like, they'll either ignore us completely or they will call and be highly concerned about it.
What's your, how many you think, out of 100 will say, call you? Or how many ignore you out of 100?
That's a very good question. I'd be happy.
Well, I
just in general, most people want to, and most people in Mills River want to work with us, and that is, I'm very appreciative of that. But yeah, so we have a follow-up compliance inspection. If no progress is made or no communication is made, the next step is to do a second notice of violation and then another follow-up compliance inspection, and then same period, 30 days typically. And then this is where procedures will start to go into fines. So a final notice of violation is issued with one civil citation with initial $50 fine, with another 30 days to complete the corrective actions. A follow-up compliance inspection is conducted after that. And if no progress is made, or, there's a numerous things that could cause civil citations, they accumulate at a rate of $50 a day. So we've gotten into situations where property owners do not want to communicate with us, work with us, and those fines have racked up. It's unfortunate, but that is where in our enforcement process right now, we're at a halt. There's additional code enforcement action that we could potentially pursue, such as nuisance abatement. You'd have to go through, the legal system to get an order of abatement and go through that process. We have never done that in the town. Just wanted to put that out there, that's where we're at. We've issued civil citations, but that is the stopping point. We have never gone to do additional code enforcement action through nuisance abatement.
Question. Okay, so why have we not went to that level? That's one question.
Of course.
But the other one is, say you have two issues in the complaint, and the property that has the complaint fixes one, but they don't fix the other. Does that second notice of violation change? Is it updated? And then they have the 30 days to follow up, and then it becomes, now, does that start the cycle over again? Or does it go from the second notice and then into the final notice after that?
So if they correct, just through standard practice, if they correct one of the violations, we issue a 30-day compliance extension and give them time to work on the other violation, or the other, typically it's outdoor storage and junk vehicles. Those are the most common I see in town.
Is that done under policy or discretion?
So in the code, we're allowed, as long as significant progress is made, and that's not defined in the code what significant progress is, we are allowed to grant a maximum of 30-day compliance extensions. Doesn't say how many we can grant, but that is the maximum time period we're allowed to issue extensions for. And as long as they keep making progress, we can keep granting extensions. Like, I'll give you an example. I worked with somebody for 2 years to get their property into compliance. They made progress every time we met, and 2 years later, their property was in compliance, and I established a good relationship with somebody in the community.
And never got to the point of fines.
Never got to the point of fines.
I think that's going to be important. That example.
That is textbook. That's the textbook way to do it,
I like
right there.
I don't like the not having a definition.
And I'll, not to go off on a tangent, but let's say we get a complaint about one, a complaint about one property. They didn't get into compliance, and we get another complaint about the same property. We like to gain contact information from, the properties that are potentially in violation, and we'll take care of it informally before even starting, standard and formal enforcement action. That is our first means of getting the property in compliance, is by reaching out informally, and ultimately having their contact information to reach out to them and letting them know, this is what needs to happen to get into compliance. As long as they're willing to work with us, there's no issues, and people are highly appreciative of that in my experience.
There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're documenting it.
Of course.
And you're, what you're doing is you're building a case for when you get down this road and have to move into a courtroom setting or something along those lines. I would offer, even before you issue the first notice of violation, after your staff investigation, you write a letter on the town letterhead and identify yourself as a code enforcement officer and say, hey, we've gotten some information. This is what might be going on in property. Would love to meet with you at a date and time of your convenience and talk with you about it before you ever make anything. I mean, that's still formal.
Yep.
It's on the town letterhead and it sits in the file, but you've knocked the hard edges off of it initially. And I bet you do that.
So there are courtesy warnings.
Okay.
That was, before we had SmartGov, So SmartGov has standard templates
I got you.
for our notice of violations. Normally you'll have before we had SmartGov, it was a courtesy warning, then a notice of violation, and then potentially civil penalties. With SmartGov, there's a first, second, and final notice of violation. Courtesy warnings are still standard practice. So any other questions?
Is that something you think we're gonna need to have in this ultimately like actual direction that we retain that courtesy? I do not want to see that slip through to future people that eliminate courtesy. I'm really a fan of everything you just said.
Courtesy
Trying to
warnings.
keep it informal, trying to be neighbor.
And that, that is the feedback we're looking from the board.
I don't know about the other six, but I'm definitely a fan of that front end being a neighbor approach. Nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Really a big fan.
I concur with you, Brian.
And also, why have we not went to
Hopefully we haven't
Court.
needed.
Well, we haven't got to that point yet.
Awesome.
yeah.
That's fantastic.
But,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
the planning department budget has funds programmed for nuisance abatement and for those additional, I'll just call them enhanced code enforcement options. So that would be going to court, getting orders from a judge to abate a property. It would be going on the property ourselves as the town and actually cleaning up the issue itself and putting that as a lien on the property. So again, council has funded that over multiple years in our budget, but it's never been done before. And that was the point of our presentation to council this March, was to basically say, hey, here's where we are with code enforcement, after hiring staff since 2020. We now have some problem cases where fines have accumulated and we don't want to continue penalizing these folks, but we need additional options for enforcement. And there was informal direction given then that it was okay to move forward with that. So there's some test case properties where there's a missing property owner who's deceased, no owner of the property, but there's a violation on the property. That would be one we hope to do as a test case this year to start testing out that process. But again, having that codified in any future ordinance would be helpful, because as has been said, the gray area and lack of process means we have to use our judgment to come up with best practices on our own.
How many of those cases do we have? Just kind of dangling out there, just
3 to 5
3 to 5. Yes, sir.
approximately.
Do you have, I think, keeping the discussion
Yeah.
approach here, not looking for an exact number or even a guess, but do we have people call back in and kind of harass you guys for updates on a complaint they've made?
I wouldn't necessarily say harass,
I know the right word.
but
Follow up.
request for
Frequently.
updates. Yes, sir.
I know this is stating the obvious, but the population growth in Mills River is not only just really hard to get it to see if you're not living in it every day, but just permits alone that we see and permits that we know are coming. Fulham Farm is an example. I don't know if you've driven through our townhomes over here. Where am I pointing? Here. I could barely drive through there.
Mhm.
Kids in the street. I mean, barely. The population's growing and they didn't come from North Milk River Road. They're moving from somewhere else. And as someone who's been, the owner of a real estate firm for 21 years, most of these people are coming from places that heavily into regulation.
yes.
I'm sorry, they're coming here to get away from it. That's a relative state. So they come here, they want more regulation. They want, the HOA police driving around the neighborhood. We owe it to the future residents to make sure we're keeping the data the approaches, not the strong arm. I don't want to I want to overcorrect something. Just a theme.
Well, what Kevin said, I think that's what we all would like to see, a friendly approach. And that's what Mills River is about.
Yes, sir.
Just to confirm, this discussion is guidance for you to put together what comes back to us next, right? Okay, just so we're all keeping in, perspective of where this conversation, this was the first one.
And that's why we wanted to keep this informal, because I mean, council only had their second discussion of less than a week ago. I mean, generally how I thought this would play out is we just have a kickoff tonight. We could come back with some additional ideas after getting this type of direction from you. And we probably wouldn't move into actual code drafting until the third meeting.
Now, is this going to be something that's rolled into the UDO?
No.
So this can be done separately. I know this is a worn out question. We don't have nuisances creating down zone.
Yeah, that was my.
No,
question.
a nuisance, believe it or not, is not a land use regulation. It's what we talked about with the hazard prevention ordinance. It's a police power. So although we can use it on property and on land, it's not considered a zoning regulation.
So those were actually questions I had you ask earlier. I know you did too. Thank
So
you.
even though we tie it to land use,
It's, if you look at that state land use law 160D, nuisances do not fall under that.
Perfect.
And that was why staff wanted to bring this to council's attention in March, because actually I found out then that the consultants wouldn't be doing it. So we've kind of kicked off that process on our own behind the scenes.
So whatever we do, it's not involved in UDO, basically.
Correct. Nuisance, prohibited nuisances, noise ordinances, all those types of regulations, not involved in the Unified Development Ordinance, not affected by down zoning.
And we're police policy, municipality police.
Municipal police power, yes, correct.
Perfect. We really appreciate the conversation about this, because this is keeping us, this is getting us going.
Of course, yes, sir. All right, we've kind of already touched on significant outdoor storage. But this is one of our most common violations we see in the town. If you see the words that are bolded, those are the most common types of significant outdoor storage.
And are most of these, because I get a sense of this with the
Yeah.
public here, are most of these directed toward businesses?
No, sir.
Really?
also, could you give me an example of what significant would look like?
That's why we need to update the nuisance ordinance.
Definition. Can you go back to Mike's question? I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't hear.
Jeannie was asking a significant question.
I
My question was on the outdoor storage, are most of those, not this specific, directed toward businesses?
So
Current ordinance?
In other words, this, you said that gets the most, you get the most complaints for this.
outdoor storage, significant outdoor storage and
Right.
junk vehicles,
You
correct?
get the most complaints for this. Are most of those complaints directed toward businesses?
No, sir. Of course, residential properties. Now there is very limited code on outdoor storage.
Yeah, it doesn't distinguish anyway.
It doesn't distinguish. You're correct. Yes,
I
sir.
just didn't know if you had a sense if it was directed more toward businesses or.
But that's what Jeff was talking about. We need to separate these things. Because
I think everyone here.
my
agrees this
thinking
needs to be
is-
used
Oh, I agree. I'm not
Yeah,
saying you
my
should. I
thinking
was
is-
just curious.
Anyone object?
if a business is operating, he's got 2 acres, and he's been operating. Whatever he does on that business, he's been doing for years, should be able to still do it. You know, if somebody moves here from wherever and they don't like the view,
Before we move on, I got another question. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Michael, if we, attach these to land uses, and when we were talking in the UDO that, all of our non-compliance will be forgiven,
Non-conforming,
non-conforming, thank you, will be forgiven.
will no longer be known.
How do we rectify that in the nuisance way? Because say I've got my business on my residential property. I don't know, maybe I'm pallet making or whatever. And I have something that is business adjacent or useful, but is on a residential property. How, as a town, do we enforce that? Or how would that go?
So there are kind of two parts to that, because the use of the land for the business obviously would fall under the zoning regulation.
Yeah.
That's where nonconformities come into play. But typically, nonconformities are not applicable to nuisances. Because you think of it as a police power, think of it as a police regulation. These nuisance ordinances apply equally to all citizens and properties within the town. So there is no exemption or legal non-conforming use for a business or a specific property owner that may have been here longer than another. It is a regulation applied equally to everyone across the town.
So here are how significant outdoor storage violations are currently enforced. So just to be clear, there are a lack of enforcement standards. There are no visibility standards for outdoor storage. Someone storing, having significant outdoor storage, it's not even defined first off. In their backyard versus their front yard, that's not taken into consideration. No quantity or dimensional standards to define what is considered significant. And as we talked about, enforcement applies to both residential and non-residential properties equally within the town. So here, going back to the one, piece of code in our nuisance ordinance that relates to commercial and industrial uses. Outdoor storage by commercial and industrial uses shall be limited to items that are designated and intended for permanent outdoor usage, storage, and/or sale. Outdoor storage areas in business and industrial zones shall conform to a minimum of 1/2 the minimum front building setback and not block or obstruct parking spaces or any line of sight for a public road. So that one piece of code is really the only direct reference we have to commercial and industrial uses in relation to the nuisance ordinance. The next most common cited nuisance violation are junk motor vehicles. A junk motor vehicle is defined as any vehicle without a current vehicle restoration permit and/or, well, not defined, but this is the provision from the code, and/or abandoned manufactured home as defined. And the definition of a junk motor vehicle comes from state statutes. So this is the standard definition of a junk motor vehicle. A motor vehicle that does not display a current license plate or vehicle registration, is partially dismantled or wrecked, cannot be propelled or moved in the manner it was originally intended to move, or is more than 5 years old and appears to be worth less than $500 as provided by the municipality, or as a junk motor vehicle as defined in General Statute 160A. So the definition of a junk motor vehicle is from state statutes, and that's our code references state statutes.
So, I will assume somebody works on automobiles. We got several in this town. And, they may have one that's been there 30 days or longer. But they have a work order to repair it, but can't get the parts. That would classify as a vehicle restoration permit, right?
So I'm going to go into vehicle restoration permits in a following slide. So we'll go through that. So how junk motor vehicle violations are currently enforced. Staff, we factor in the following questions, determine if a vehicle is junked. Is it dismantled or wrecked? Does it display a current license plate and/or registration? Does the vehicle have a valid vehicle restoration permit? And Mr. Foster, I'll go into that in the next slide. Does the vehicle appear to have been stationary for a long period of time? What we do not take into consideration are the following: the location of the junk vehicle, the quantity of junked vehicles on the property, if it's located on a residential versus non-residential property, if it poses a public health hazard versus meeting the statutory definition of junked. There are no there's no guidance on what is considered a public health hazard for a junked vehicle versus what the statutory definition of a junked vehicle is in the general statutes. For instance, a vehicle that has broken glass, broken into and is just laying on someone's property for a while versus a vehicle that doesn't have a license plate on it, but it appears not a public health hazard. There's no separation of those in our code, just to let y'all know. So how do we determine the junked vehicle is not junked? So working with property owners, we will schedule an in-person site inspection to verify that the vehicles turn over, drive forward, and drive in reverse. Not necessarily street legal. We're not doing a full-on inspection, but really those are the three things we like to see to determine that the vehicle is not junked and it operates in the manner it's intended originally. Also the junk vehicle could be moved into an enclosed building on the property, and that would get rid of the violation. Same goes with outdoor storage. If you wanted to take significant outdoor storage and move it into an enclosed building, that gets rid of the violation. And then lastly, ultimately the vehicle is removed from the property. Any questions?
Just something to think about.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Not everyone has the benefit of a shop. I've got a shop. Maybe I've got a junk vehicle and nobody knows. That's great. But I wonder if we don't consider giving, I'm sorry, if somebody has one car in their driveway that doesn't run, I just don't have a problem. I don't know what the limit is. But residential non-businesses, maybe there's a discussion. I don't have the money to do anything with it, but me and my son are gonna have a hell of a project in about 6 years. I'm sorry, there needs to be, I don't know how that looks outlined in that. And I know you keep reminding of this, and it is huge on my list. We've got to have definition. Anybody would argue that? That has got to be this. The ambiguity of some of these. I promise you, 3 of us will define it 5 different ways. But I think there needs to be some thought given to that. This junk, this is one of the largest or the more common complaints we have.
Yes, sir. Significant outdoor storage and junk vehicles.
And I think to some of the surprise up here, that most of those complaints are residential.
Yes, sir.
So I'm sorry, I'm not looking to be an HOA. I just don't think that's the town's goal. Do I want 10 crammed into a 2-car driveway? Of course not. I don't know. We all draw the line somewhere. I just think that needs to be one.
Well, I think the point is we have to draw a line. We have to figure it out. We have to
That's-
we have to get some detail in this, so,
If
so
you don't
that,
mind, I'd ask the Kevin. And I know we're gonna have example ordinances to look at in the future.
Yes, sir.
That's gonna be. Make sure we don't.
Problem with nuisances in general is just one man's meat and another man's poison.
Right.
And, there are many jurisdictions and talking exactly about what you're talking about. You've got a vehicle that's not running on blocks in the driveway. There are many jurisdictions that say, put a tarp over it, keep the tarp tied down, and you can, and keep the tarp maintained because they degrade.
Mhm.
And, we'll give you a certain amount of time to leave it like that. I mean, it's hidden, then it's no longer there. That is a viable option in many jurisdictions.
I mean, my
Yeah.
guess is the complaints that are the most common complaints now are gonna be the most common complaints in the future.
Sure they are.
Give you guys better, tools to use.
The city of Brevard you can have one vehicle.
That's where I'm coming
tarped.
from.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
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 And if you,
Yeah.
and on top of that, if you can, not only tarp it, but put it in a side or a rear yard.
Exactly.
Or screen it or put some sort of opaque screen on it. If you can't see, is it a nuisance? If it's on the side of a hill somewhere that you've got to drive all the way up above it and get a pair of binoculars out to see it? And the answer is no, it's
Well,
not a nuisance.
well, and that's where even the definition of nuisance, right? 'Cause a
That's right.
nuisance because there are hazards from, varmints, that's a nuisance, but is it
Yeah.
a nuisance because
An eyesore.
it's an eyesore that,
Aesthetic,
not,
yeah.
not even that as much as is it a nuisance because of the proliferation of junk in your residential neighbor's yard devalues the properties around it?
Right,
Is that, is that part of a nuisance?
My
And
good friend, I'm sorry, one more thing.
Yes, sir.
My good friend who's retired now, Rich Ducker. I don't know if you ever got to know him. Rich, a great guy. I just found on Coates Canons, he has a really interesting definition for a public nuisance, and it goes like, and it's really good. It says, a public nuisance is a condition or activity involving real property that amounts to an unreasonable interference with the health, safety, morals, or comfort of the community. And that's pretty wide open,
Which I would-
but it also infers a sense of unreasonableness. If it infers a sense of gross oversight, negligence, or whatever on the part of on the part of the person that's being, that has the nuisance. So, I mean, there's, it's all in the language. And I'm not saying we don't adopt Rich's definition, but that's a pretty good way to look at it, and if you do that but as Brian says, and pursue things from a neighborly perspective, and the other unfortunate thing that Kevin hadn't brought up, but I'll tell you, because that had happened to me more than once, is you try to be as neighborly as you can, you write a courtesy letter and whatnot, and all you get is, either a cold shoulder or a middle finger when you walk on a property. Well, there's nothing you can do with those people except hammer them. And, if it's a bad enough nuisance, then you've got to have the wherewithal and the means to do that. But if it's just somebody that's got a neighbor that's upset because there's a Carmen Gia sitting on 4 blocks with that some 14-year-old kid just can't wait to get him and his dad turn a wrench on when he turns 16, you really got to be able to have that discretionary power. And I think, again, I'm going to reiterate, you need to look into being a sworn official.
thank you.
Kevin, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you get a complaint, let's say junk cars,
Uh-huh.
if it's in the backyard and it's fenced, is that going to be a nuisance complaint? Is that a true?
Right now, I think you
It
can't.
is. Now it is.
I mean, they're rough, but I think right now.
Because like technically I would be the only one that would see what is in my fenced in yard.
So we have to determine that the complaint is valid with evidence. So if we can't see the junk vehicle in the backyard, but we receive complaint about it,
Yep.
we have to have physical evidence to determine that complaint is valid. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it'd be different. Health or hazard versus an eyesore.
Yeah, but we haven't defined anything,
No, no,
so.
for our future, I mean,
We don't have
that-
that
that's
defined.
what you're saying, like an eyesore in a backyard's not, sorry, that's.
Health or hazard is the
One-
key.
Right.
And you
Yeah,
also got,
now, if it's health and health and, of the community, right, and the people who are on the property, 100%. But, if, say
Here's
A
like
is
abandoned
here,
Swimming pool example in a
Like-
neighborhood. You
Doesn't have a
seen
fence.
abandoned Swimming pool, what that looks like after 10 years?
yes, but if it's fit in and it's covered, is that technically a nuisance? Just because, you could have mosquitoes there, but you've taken relative care that there's not a safety hazard and it is a covered pool. So there's the safety and the reduction of pestilence. So, would that fall into a nuisance?
And I'm not trying to, get the finer detail, I'm just trying to use that to make a point of
I know.
that one of our future conversations. Because covered, abandoned, in-ground pools aren't as nice as that sounds.
Correct.
They're bad, they are, they are mosquito.
The reason why mine was
Yeah.
turned in.
Right.
That's-
So I don't mean one season, I mean 1 5-year. 10
I mean, so is
Mhm.
nuisance limited to hazard and health?
I don't want to open up eyesore complaints for somebody's back.
But,
I don't wanna-
but we have to define that,
Right.
like eyesores, sorry, no go. But if it presents a hazard to the overall community in some way, then that's a full-on throttle right there.
I just think that's a discussion. Exactly where the line is on, I'd like that.
And from the official standpoint, you also have to remember that they're bound. They can't perform an illegal search. They can't go rent a crane and get up on, or a drone and get on. A drone will get you in more trouble than you've ever seen, because that's an unreasonable search. It's a Fourth Amendment, issue. So, it's a fine line. And, but if you're standing at the fence, you can't see over the fence, but it smells like 722 rotten diapers, then there's probably a problem in there. That's when you go get an administrative search warrant and go about it the right way.
Yes, sir.
Michael, do you all have enough thoughts on how you would rewrite this code to move forward with it? With some feedback from us, or our first
I'll
step?
be honest, not currently to rewrite it now.
Not completely, but to begin.
No,
I
this
guess
is
my
all
point
great
was-
feedback, and I mean, we've been noting all this down. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to get somewhere on this and, just give you some feedback from each of us of what we'd like to see in there, just as a start.
You're up against the cookie clock, aren't you? No, no. So while you're on this, I know you have more slides to show us. Do you have a relationship with the health department for any of these? I mean, I'm assuming we have to, but
So if we receive a complaint about
sewage.
raw sewage, we refer that complaint to Henderson County Department of Environmental Health, correct?
A lot of these things are gonna be out of our hands. I know I've said that before, with construction inspections are all done at the county level.
We're the eyes on the ground,
But where there are some
Yeah.
things that we turn over.
correct? Yes, sir.
the 700 dirty diaper thing, that might be an environment.
That would be an environmental.
But thankfully, we do have.
I'll-
Reminding everybody.
I'll say but again, though, but Henderson County Environmental Health has limitations on what they will investigate.
Yep.
It's purely related to on-site wastewater systems. So that doesn't mean there can't be a situation that is a environmental or public hazard that the town would need to address. So I would just caution, by not including it in our ordinance and just throwing it to a partner agency, there are potential hazards that could be missed. Just be aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not what I was implying, but thank
No.
you.
mm-mm.
Thank you.
So on the next slide, vehicle restoration permits. So how this process works is, somebody can get a permit that gives them additional time to restore their vehicle. And they will come to town hall and apply for the permit. They can also apply for the permit online as well. Now, with code enforcement, how this ties in, let's say a property owner has a couple junked vehicles and they're not able to, restore them, get them to operate or function in a normal capacity within a certain time period. What this does with the code enforcement for vehicle restoration permits is gives the property owner more time to restore their vehicles. So it mainly is a tool we use in code enforcement to help property owners get their property in compliance, but also have more time to get those vehicles into compliance.
Any cost for this permit?
Yes, sir. It's $50 for one permit. And there are no, and just to, also be clear, there are no standards on how many vehicle restoration permits a property owner can apply for. That's there are questions to be talked about. So
What's the time limit?
So 6 months is the expiration date. And then if they provide progress, physical progress, receipts of buying parts for the vehicle, which they have one parts vehicle and one vehicle they're restoring. When we review the permit, we want to, make sure that they're compatible with each other first off, in terms of parts going on to, you're not going to take a truck parts and put it on, exactly. Yeah. So Um, yeah, so basically we'll require proof of progress and then we can issue up to 2 additional 6 months of extensions
Without additional fees.
without additional fees. Yes, sir.
Kind of like county building permits.
Yeah.
Inspections. So.
Mhm. So some questions to discuss, you know, for potential enforcement options. Well, we're trying to get feedback on are, should we have visibility and screening standards, quantity and dimensional standards, different standards for residential and non-residential uses? How do we want to define what's considered significant outdoor storage? Should, here's an example, should storing 200 buckets of concrete on your property outside be a code violation versus storing 200 tires on your property? Those are questions that we have to talk about. And then also appearance and organizational standards. Do we want to take into consideration if the solid waste or outdoor storage is, stored orderly versus being just all over the place? Those are questions to talk about.
Where in there do you see? Where in there do you see, not just because our mayor's GC, we have a lot of the construction conversation, construction debris, job site debris was one of the things that was brought up. Does that fit into, residential, non-residential, where it applies? We have a separate bullet point for construction.
No,
job
sir.
Sites. That's something that's come up. In general, good neighbors. I had a house built directly across the street from me. I picked up some trash that blew over multiple times. If it was in complete disarray every single day, all day, that would have been different, but I'm not sure everybody's gonna be like that.
And you deal with that, in my opinion. There are ways that you can condition project approval for construction. And you can hit things like noise, hours of operation that you allow. You're not gonna, let you, when you mobilize materials and equipment, you can require that to be screened or be placed in an area that is out of the way. The loose materials, you gotta, and tarping vehicles that are leaving the site with C&D materials, that's something that always could be, when you issue a permit, I'm assuming you can still do this. You can lay conditions on there that are germane to the project and say things like, you will maintain your mud mat as the day goes on. And at the end of the day, you're going to make sure it's roller sweep and the road's clean. The trucks are going to be tarped. Noise, if the only time you can get the concrete pump truck there is at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning because it's rained for the past 6 months, that's great. Get a waiver from the town, and do that. It's going to make some work, but you can regulate that and do that in a manner that it's not going to be, especially the big contractors they expect. And one of the things that I can't, and most of the town down here is in a watershed water supply area, and we've got, there's fuel storage and fueling facilities that are on sites because they don't want to fill up some of these vehicles and anywhere else. Something happens in one of those 500-gallon drums, turns over, why it make them, they need to be behind a berm or some sort of containment. You can make, I'm not saying that's something that has to happen, but the town, through its police power, has that authority, through its regulatory, or has that
I'm probably
authority.
looking to make sure it doesn't go, probably be a lot more loose upsets with me, being around it a lot. At the end of the day, there's the dumpster's full. So guess what? There's a pile of drywall scraps and cut in 2x4s, and there's just piles of crap. It's a job site, and I just don't want there to be a spot in there for someone to complain about daily or weekly garbage at a job site. I don't want to see that.
Again, that's a discretionary role. That's
voice thing. You bring an interesting question for me. Don't quote me on this, but I believe the county has construction not allowed at 7.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if that's one of the questions we don't talk. To not, I don't want a concrete pump next door to my house at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's, but again,
But
if.
again, if we don't have the conversation, are we leaving ourselves open to something? That's really more
and
where I
that-
bring. it.
Yeah, and if you don't address it, then it's gonna happen. And how do you deal with it then? You
But
write them a
how-
violation, it's, there's a lot of moving parts.
So I walk a lot of dogs in apartments and larger community settings where they have an actual dumpster. And, it's got 1,000 signs on it, but it will say, like no dumping allowed, no going into the compactor. And then you've got like at least like 20 by 20 worth of like furniture back behind the compactor and stuff like that. So while construction is, like a different beast, because this continual work, this one place that I walk the dog at is the same pile has been there for like 3 weeks because they can't cart it off like with the compactor trucks that they bring. So, so I am all up for, like screening stuff like that, because I know it happens and we're gonna have more multifamily kind of entities moving in and development. So that may be something that we have to think about, like going forward with multiple people living on the same property, and larger trash needs for them.
Restaurants.
Correct. So, yeah, I'm definitely up for, having those screens, because I don't want to see that. I don't want to smell it either, but, sometimes you just gotta, it is what it is, but, the, second thing, now I know that y'all may not agree with me about this, but I am going to throw it out there. That we have Sunday as a no noise day. I grew up, my grandfather was very strict on Sunday that it was the day of rest, the day of silence for your neighbors, the day of silence for yourself. No large like noises, like you don't get to fire your gun that day. You don't get to ride the 3-wheeler. You don't hoop and holler up down the road. Everybody is conscious of our neighbors and we allow that day of rest. I do know that, on Sundays that we have still like the 10 to 6, kind of noise making, or it's 10 to 9, or 10 to 10, whatever it is. That we do have set standards for that, but I would like to see that hour of hootenanny, because I'm all up for some hootenanny, but it to be smaller so that the entire community tries to rest or has the opportunity to rest on one day at least a week. So throwing that out there.
Would that include mowing your lawn?
No, would not.
So the, potential enforcement options for junk motor vehicles, some questions to keep in mind. Should we permit one junked vehicle on a property? Again, applicability to residential versus non-residential uses. Should we have different standards for different types of junk vehicles? For instance, should there be a difference between junk vehicles that are a public health hazard versus junk vehicles that are not a public health hazard? And what defines a public health hazard
That goes
versus?
back to defining what it is.
Exactly. How many vehicle restoration permits should one property owner be allowed to apply for at a time? Let's say a property owner has 4 or 5 junk vehicles on their property and they want to just apply for numerous vehicle restoration permits and not get the property into compliance. How many vehicle restoration permits should, it's not defined in the code or anywhere. Visibility and screening standards. This is the next, just a potential, enforcement option not already in our code. Do y'all want to talk about tall grass and overgrown vegetation nuisance ordinances? An example is for our definition, any uncontrolled growth of weeds, grasses, or bushes in the excess of 15 inches causing or threatening to cause vermin infestation, a fire hazard, any condition which is detrimental to the public health, safety, or general welfare. You know, what are your thoughts on having a tall grass overgrown vegetation?
Hard, no.
Okay.
Leave that to the HOA and, you know, the declared neighbor.
My concern is we've got a lot of fields
Mm.
that fit that description, but are hayed or turned over for hay. And with, I don't know, somebody that's new to here, they don't realize, maybe they haven't been through the whole cycle of how we work a field. And they may look at this ordinance and be like, you know what, I'm gonna get rid of that hay field that's right beside me because I have mice that come in during the winter time or whatever.
So they're
It's how you
different.
Craft it. It's
Yeah.
how you craft.
It's how you
it.
craft it. Yes, sir.
It's how you craft it. It's, you know, before you say any uncontrolled growth of weeds, grasses, brushes in excess of 15 inches, you say on an established lot of record occupied by a single family or multifamily dwelling. If there are any uncontrolled weeds, because that kind of gives you the intent that it's in a neighborhood, that it's next to somebody, that it's, you know,
But people be people.
well, people, again, it's one man's,
I know Jenny had one of the concerns in the past when Bradford Fairs take over.
Yep.
And when we allow fields to go, I mean, right now, we don't have any farm. but-
Yeah.
but
We're lucky.
But
Future.
isn't-
Well, I would make the argument that if it's abandoned, it's no longer in. Something's abandoned to go follow a year, that don't mean allow it 1 year. a future.
Correct.
But, you know, the Bradford Fair.
Mhm. Mhm.
No, the current ordinance does say that, yeah.
Yeah.
That ag exhibit.
It does. But for the UDO, that's a different conversation.
But I may
Yeah, I meant
also
that,
decide to take out that half of an acre behind my house and not do garden, but do hay. Cause I used to live around like straight hay fields and then we changed them into gardens. And if I wanted to go back into the hay business, not profitable, but if I wanted to, then I would be fitting into your defined. Because that half acre back behind my house would be a hay field and it would actually fit that. Even though I'm not a bona fide farm or agriculture, but say I did have some goats or whatnot that I wanted to actually bale that hay for. Technically I would fit into that. So, that's my concern.
it's how you craft it. I'm gonna respectfully disagree with Brian. And again, go back to my original statement, you know, this is, you know, whether we like it or not, we're rural, we're Mills River, we're laid back, but we're a city. And we're growing, and you're going to have these things come up in neighborhoods, and it's just something that how you craft it is how you're gonna be able to deal with it. You're a great example. What you just said is an absolutely great example. But there's gotta be a way that you can craft it, the language of this through rules of construction and get that, get where you need to be. So if you're in an established subdivision and you know, these two people die and there's no next of kin and you've got this, you got to be able to deal with it.
But if they're an established subdivision, it would more likely be under the HOAs.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, don't
jurisdiction.
get me started on HOAs.
I'm not a fan.
I had the conversation, we have closed businesses. Where
Yes.
it's like that, where
Yep.
the town step in with business.
Yep.
Where we draw the
Yeah.
line, that business was a bar.
Yep.
I'm not going in there to touch, I don't know that conversation, but maybe residential, I'm gonna be hard pressed to give a encourage proposition.
Well, and as he's quoted, you know, he cited this from the Forest City Code of Ordinances. I would respectfully recommend looking around. at some other code that's out there. One of the great things about being a planner is you can legally plagiarize. And that's a fact. Am I lying or am I dying here? And so you can, there's no copyright on another town's code. You can take it almost verbatim and use it if it fits you. And there's a way that you can find something that'll work.
Well, I do think detail is important. I think lack of detail
Yes.
here, lack of detail in zoning, lack of detail is where we've got some things that we don't want. So yeah, the more detail, the better. Define things. Anything you say is undefined, let's define it.
And back to Mr. Burton's point, it's how you craft the language of the prohibition. So, in relation to the vicinity of the home, a traditional residential lot. Let's say I have a house, detached garage, but then I also own, a half acre of grassy field. Should that grassy field not apply to this versus, the occupied lot? Does that, just
You
things
get
to
into
think
terms
about.
like curtilage.
Curtilage,
and-
yes.
And stuff like that. So
Exactly.
it's,
Well,
look around.
Well, we
You'll
also
find
want
something.
perfection to be, interrupt progress either. I mean, because this isn't gonna be subject to down zoning limits or anything like that. So craft a detailed thing, we can always adjust it.
The more heavy lifting you do on the front end
I agree.
with a nuisance ordinance, the better off you're gonna be. And it's imperative to have public input and have folks that are providing, their thoughts on things as well. But, look around and, don't be afraid to think outside the box, there's ways to skin a cat. So.
Now, is this something, the board would like staff to look into?
Yes.
Overgrown tall grass? Okay,
With,
Noted.
with the
crafted,
of us being agricultural, rurally based, I'll
Mhm.
spit it out here in a minute. Or if a resident wanted to, pursue the art of baling hay, I want them to be able to pursue that art. Cause there would be nothing different than, I don't know, growing that and then deciding to put like corn maze or something on it. There's many things that we can do with large plots of grasses and bushes that kind of find their way into our everyday life, and I would like to see those exempted. But if this does become a hazard per se, well, exactly, a hazard or a fire hazard, yeah. So if we can kind of squirm around that and get some leniency, that would be fantastic.
One team, undefined team, kind of think, partner, a lot of the, what makes something nuisance to me to be fine. So. It's seasonal, right? So it could be that something that's been overgrown for more than 2 seasons. Or talking about construction debris. Something that's been, construction debris that's been abandoned and left behind for 3 months, or, something that can contribute, I think, to the definition or the boundary for the definition of what makes a nuisance is how long being has been present, because in car is example, or you're working on a car, or you have tires because you're in the process of, and your neighbors complain because you have your tires in the front yard for 2 weeks while you're in the process of repairing the car, or, is it a matter of the tires have been there? I think you have an example, $200, have been there for 6 months, whatever it may be reasonable. But I feel like that's part of real. That so it could provide.
I think one of the tougher challenges will be the eyesore.
Yeah.
Versus the health, right? Or sewage is coming up. Yesterday was too long. Sure. Right, so I know that's an easy pick
Right.
there, but to make the point, that's, the eyesore ones are really gonna be tough. And we do a grass nuisance. My house is house. Then I have donkey, goats and hayfield and woods and pasture.
They
And-
think you're a nuisance, Brian.
What's
so
that? I have a nuisance. I guarantee you someone could come to my house.
Your donkeys think you're. a
And I'm contradicted because I have a plug-in electric car. So I have people come over to my house, and, what the hell is this guy? The eyesore part's gonna be up the long.
I
I'm
agree,
getting some help defining health hazards.
I agree with
nuisances,
you, eyesore, but I'm saying if there's something that somehow skirts all the code and it devalues someone else's property, is that an eyesore?
That's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's a
My
big,
donkeys, you know.
a big
That's
wormhole.
a big-
Who makes the determination of the evaluation? You know, first thing they'll ask you in a court of law is you a licensed North Carolina appraiser. And
Suppose
if you
that's
can't answer, if
painful.
you answer that as no, then you're done. So.
But
Well,
none of us wanna live.
I will
next to
tell you
somebody
that
dragging our
there-
Values down. So
That's
it's a
true.
real
Oh, I'm not arguing
competition
with
to
you on, I'm not arguing with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the reality of this
Yeah.
litigious world in which we live. That's the way it is. Poor Kevin, please give your presentation. I'm so
No,
sorry.
all feedback is greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great job.
Probably never again. but-
So,
Never do it again.
nuisance enforcement options for tall grass overgrown vegetation. So how can a tall / high grass prohibition be enforced? By height? Different municipalities have different height standards for what's considered a nuisance. By location, by proximity to buildings or structures, and by use. So just to show you a photo, would that photo on the screen be considered a nuisance? Those are questions to think about, it's just larger conversations we have to have.
But then it depends on the definition of nuisance.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you, oh,
If it- That's, I mean, if vermin and other things can, infestate that tall grass, then, and that's a definition of nuisance, then you'd have to say it is. So that's why it just always goes back to what the definition.
Yes, sir. And you make a
of
great
nuisance
point.
is. So-
Yep.
so in your research of other nuisance, ordinances, will you, bring us a range of, standards like exactly what you're asking? The height, the location, because really it's about the location. Because, if you're, say you've got 6 acres and only a quarter of that a quarter acre of that 6 acres is where the house sits. Really that would be, the nuisance aspect would be around the house because that would be where all the stuff is coming in for the winter, right? So if our neighbors, municipalities, could you see like how far their requirements are from the house or from the primary residence? I'm not really worried about the buildings aspect, except maybe in the fire way, but because if you have a barn and you have tall grass, you probably already got mine. Probably got barn to take care of the tall. But yeah, when it comes to the actual primary residence, if you could give us some detail on, or the scope of what they like to see. Like how far out, does it have to encompass like the quarter acre that land sits on and the other 5 3/4 is good, or like if they give any of those kind of standards?
So my understanding is just more research on that specific application
Yes.
to the tall grass.
Yes, because I think when we define nuisance, define what that is, and then give it the parameter of what it applies to,
Mhm.
then it'll start clearing all the rest up slowly.
Need to start from the source. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yes.
She wants to know how far a mouse can travel is basically what she's saying, from the tall grass to a house.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe
The
not that much,
travel
but-
patterns of a mouse.
Yep.
Okay. So just going back to big picture questions that we've talked about a lot. So how do you define a public nuisance? Should you take into consideration decreased property values, unattractiveness, livability of the neighborhoods, and comfort / happiness of neighbors? Another question, what are your thoughts on enforcement processes and strategies for existing prohibitions? 3, should the town consider any new nuisance prohibitions? And then lastly, should the town consider eliminating any current nuisance prohibitions? So any feedback on those questions is greatly appreciated.
One of my questions that we get early on. Forward, all of us.
Yes.
You know me, I take copious notes, I can't.
Of course, the president.
At some point. Cause I don't want you put a lot into this, and I would love to see everyone do a lot of homework.
Yeah, I'd like a copy.
For meeting 2 of what sounds to be 4.
So, yeah, this is more to start a general conversation on how we want to, how y'all want to proceed. So,
I've been asked, we all have that in our head.
yes, sir.
I think given the amount of discussion and then back and forth that happened during.
This is our last slide.
Yes.
Question or thought?
Great discussion, in my opinion, for what that's worth.
Yeah,
As
my
always,
point
Kevin, thanks
was,
for all-
that's what I wanted to get to is just
Excellent job.
providing feedback, how we do that. I mean, so if we go through here, do you want us to provide written feedback to you directly? Or wait till the next meeting, or what do you want?
I would say, why don't you let us come back with some more information? I mean, as always, staff is here. So if you have feedback, send it to me directly. But I think for now, we'll prepare information based on all the talking points and questions we received throughout the presentation. And we're happy to go through any of that additional stuff at the next meeting. But as always, we're here for you. You know how to reach us, so don't hesitate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to send 45 thoughts on a 5-day period. Just email you.
That might be a new.
Good job on that.
So it says my.
Thank y'all.
Good job.
Thank you. I think look forward, this will be a lot of food for thought here, so. Last. Next item, on the agenda is to talk about the UDO, meeting and, the outline. Doing that. So and I think we're going to cover this. To get this topic going.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be brief. I'm not going to recap the whole thing. I mean, I will say for the audience, the town has embarked on a project where we're rewriting all of our land use and development codes because they have not been comprehensively updated in a long time. And that involves looking at new zoning districts, a new zoning map, and new land use and zoning regulations. So recently the consultant was out and the steering committee, which is made up of this planning board and board of adjustment members, reviewed some of these first early draft work products. And since some of those members weren't able to attend that meeting, and I heard from a couple planning board members there was a desire to add this to this agenda, really we just wanted to provide y'all a forum to discuss these products more and provide any feedback to staff. I did email them all out to the steering committee as well. And our internal deadline to receive any comments from y'all is, I believe, Monday, October 13th. Because basically I have to turn that over to the consultant so we can finalize our final version. And then all of those final work documents get posted to the project website so they can then be consumed by seen by the public. And that's www.imaginemillsriver.com. So really, I'm just opening it up for discussion. didn't know if anyone had time, to watch the video recording, or look at the zoning map or zoning districts, but really we're just looking for informal feedback to pass on to the consultants.
A couple of us asked for this just to be kind of a standing bullet point until we get there, and just the driving force behind that was we were a little scared when we were told we were 4 months behind. And so I hope we've made up a day or two on that. I know that we don't really have a choice. That's a state deadline in front of us now. So we're gonna be there no matter what. I think in my individual conversations with everyone, we just wanted to reaffirm we're open to multiple meetings if it's needed, open to extra short conversations. We're open to, if you haven't gone back for those who weren't there at the last meeting, Chad agreed to do Zoom calls with us if we requested. So it doesn't have to be a here. And the other question I had before since I'm kind of cause of this one, was the full timeline. So you just gave me the first bullet point, the questions. So October 13th. So then what deadlines do we have us in front of us between now and the next time something significant like a revised, we move on from annotated. What else do we have that we can put a calendar date on or a close?
And that's being drafted by the consultants now. So the consultants are drafting the code drafting review schedule. But
Put us on that schedule.
Correct.
That's a firm schedule. And I know I'm reiterating that, but it's so important. This is our one shot. That is a state mandated deadline. We have to work that backwards. Generically, the objective was a UDO and its, final form to the planning board by early April.
to give time for council review.
Working it
Correct.
backwards, that has to happen
Yes.
in order to get out.
So I just had an update call with the consultants today from
Okay.
Code Right Planners. And that is what they're working on now, is basically putting together the full draft, the review of the draft schedule for the steering committee, which again consists of this board and Board of Adjustment members. So the plan is once that's put out, I can send that to the steering committee members. And then the intent is that we will be doing remote meetings to review these products. So there will be a certain amount of time the steering committee will have to review those. I think he's calling them modules. The first one we are going to be seeing is the zoning district module, because that seems to be the hottest topic right now. And also, with the planning board having a lot of experience in zoning and land use, also one we can sink our teeth into relatively easily. I believe after that, we'll be reviewing the procedures chapter. Beyond that, that's something the consultants are still drafting, but it is top of mind for us.
Perfect. That's really what I want everyone to know. This is a work backwards process at this point. We can't miss these the critical path, truly critical path if you're familiar with that terminology.
And I'll restate what the consultant said when he was here late September. This is thousands of pages. The end product will probably be 1,100 to 1,500 pages, and that's 300 pages is just definitions. Not saying we have to review every single one of those, but generally the way the process is going to work is the initial drafts are going to be sent to staff first. We're going to do our review. It's going to be sent to the consultant and fine-tuned. Then it will make its way to the steering committee, then back to staff and the consultant, and then that final work product will be what's presented to council.
Module.
Yes,
Then the fourth is all of them.
correct. But
Each one repeating what you just said.
yes, and there's two reviews. So I believe there's a draft one. So we're going to go through all modules in the first draft, and then once those changes are made, we'll come back and go through them all again. And that's why I say thousands of pages, because cumulatively it will be that. So again, as was said, buckle up and get ready. Because
Volunteering, I we're getting ready to get called on.
yeah. And remember, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not able to review every single line of text, don't worry, because we will be. But yeah, we do appreciate your time and effort put into that, because
This
it
may-
is critically important.
This may answer all my questions. So this is an outline. So the modules will have the details.
Correct.
Okay.
The annotated outline, I think I had the right word in my staff report, is the bones of the UDO. So there is some detail in each section talking about what that section will contain.
Okay. like rural, no, agricultural residential just said 2 acres, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then rural residential was less than 2 acres.
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna be more detail than that.
Yep.
Okay.
And
It is-
plenty of questions on that too.
And I don't, again, I know we have the modules, but one thought that I have is parts of this UDO are going to be restricted, subject to the down zoning laws. And those are the things we definitely absolutely need to get right. But there's some of it, whether it's definitions or procedures and so forth, that wouldn't be.
Well, the zoning and districts is the first module, I believe, for that.
Well, so the whole UDO is exempt from down zoning, but we have to build in procedures to deal with down zoning once it's adopted. Because, once the UDO and
Okay.
all these new zoning districts and procedures go into place, after July 1st, 26, if we change that district, it still could potentially be
Right.
down
I
zoning.
got you. So
And
procedures matter. in that.
So
I
the
got you.
procedures matter
I got
for
you.
that.
That makes sense. Okay, I got you. Everything's important. All 1,500 pages are important.
Come on, Mike.
I'm good.
And thanks for adding that. I hope just.
Yeah, and is that a consensus of the board just to have a UDO item as a standing planning board agenda item going forward?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, for me.
Yes.
Yeah,
So will these, sorry. So will these modules be presented to the committee, not the planning board, right?
correct, because the planning board is 2/3 of the steering
I
committee.
understand.
Mhm.
I think it's good.
When
We have
it leaves
enough
the
on our plate.
committee, it goes to the planning board, the board of adjustments.
The final draft, correct.
other questions on- But just circling back on agenda, and you just mentioned having the UDO as a standing item. I believe we asked for the flooding ordinance for next meeting.
Hazard,
Uh,
just change the,
Oh, sorry, hazard or
disconnect the land use if possible.
in any event, if we can plan on having that on the agenda as just a review of where that's at, as compared to.
I'm okay with that being in the UDO, because our primary concern for wanting to review it is to have it codified as a flood ordinance in the future. Currently wrapped as a municipal policing power of hazard, I'm sorry, what's the new title?
Hazard prevention. But no, that is the intent. So I mean, there will be a floodplain overlay district in the UDO with floodplain rules attached to it. So you will see that eventually, but happy to do an overview next time.
Excellent. Is there any other concerns or issues to talk about tonight?
Just a quick question. So the annexation by Big Hill Construction, that didn't come at all before the planning board?
No, that's not a land use matter. It's a municipal boundary matter. Now, if council chose to annex them and if there was a zoning assignment, if we move forward with assigning initial zoning to that property, that would come before the planning board. With the Ray Hill annexation that happened in 22 that kicked off the rural residential conversation, we did those processes at the same time. This time we're choosing not to go that route.
You're doing the research part for the town council at this point.
Well, town council needs to make their determination. I believe it's the October 23rd meeting where they have the public hearing. So yeah, their next regular meeting. They will have the public hearing and make the decision. So if they choose to annex it, we'll look at initial zoning then. If not, there's no need.
Just as a reminder, I mean, that something really good came out of that, that's in my opinion. But we were trying to do two things at the same time for the sake of town. We're just trying to expedite the process, right?
It's allowed by state law.
Yeah,
And
right.
so staff just
and-
felt it was,
It ended up getting
Efficient.
pushback, so
mhm.
why do it that way?
Learn something new every day.
Make a
Yeah.
motion.
So we do addition.
Do you have some?
No.
I checked additional items off the agenda.
Right, I think, yeah, so.
Yeah.
would Like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.